There's a conversation happening at every high-end gym in America right now. Guy driving a leased BMW, wearing a Rolex he financed, telling his buddy he's finally made it because he broke $300,000 in annual income. Meanwhile, his net worth is negative $47,000. He's not upper class. He's a well-dressed debtor with good credit. His neighbor, a retired school teacher driving a 12-year-old Camry, has $2.1 million sitting in index funds. She never made more than $75,000 in a single year. One of these people is upper class. The other one just looks like it. So which number actually matters, and why does everyone get this so catastrophically wrong? I'm going to explain what the actual threshold is for upper class in 2026, why it keeps moving further away every single year, and the uncomfortable truth about who actually crosses it. Because here's what nobody wants to admit. The people who look rich usually aren't, and the people who are rich usually look boring. By the way, I built a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically wrong. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard logic to expose the weak points in your plan, and I only ask for your email to send the report so I don't store any of your financial data. Link in the description. Here's the number. $1.9 million in net worth. That's the Federal Reserve's line for the top 10% of American households in 2026. But when Charles Schwab asked regular Americans what they think it takes to be wealthy, the average answer was 2.5 million. So even if you hit the statistical threshold, most people won't think you're actually rich yet. You're just comfortable. This is the fundamental problem with talking about class in America. We're all playing a game where the scoreboard keeps changing, and nobody agrees on what winning looks like. Think of wealth accumulation like climbing a ladder, except this ladder has a special feature. Every year you climb, someone adds 3 more rungs at the top and removes one from the bottom. The people already near the top barely notice. They've got momentum, but everyone starting at the bottom looks up and sees the top getting further away faster than they can climb. That's not a metaphor. That's literally what's happening in the data. The median American household has a net worth of $192,000. Half of everyone you see at the grocery store, at your kid's soccer game, at the DMV, has less than that. Meanwhile, the average net worth is over $1 million. How can the average be 5 times higher than the median? Because Jeff Bezos walks into a bar and suddenly everyone in that bar is a billionaire on average? The math is technically correct. It's also practically useless. This is why averages lie. A handful of people at the very top skew the numbers so violently that the average becomes a fantasy figure that describes nobody's actual reality. Let me give you the full ladder, rung by rung, so you know exactly where you're standing. Top 25% starts at $658,000. That's where you're doing better than 3 out of 4 Americans. Feels good, still not upper class. Top 20% is $891,000. You're approaching that magic $1 million mark, but you're not there yet. The psychological weight of that threshold is real. People treat $1 million like it's the finish line. It's not. It's mile marker 12 in a marathon. Top 10%, 1.9 million. This is the line. Economists call this upper class. You're officially in the club. But here's where it gets interesting. Top 5%, $3.7 million. Now we're talking about serious wealth. Multiple paid off properties. Investment portfolios generating real passive income. The kind of money where you stop thinking about money every single day. Top 1%, $13.6 million. This is where the math gets absurd. Your money is making more money than most people earn working full-time. You're not just wealthy. You're in a different economic reality. Top 0.1%, $61 million. At this level, your capital compounds faster than you could possibly spend it. You're not just generationally wealthy, you're creating a dynasty. Now, some of you are thinking, wait, what about income? Doesn't that matter more? Here's the thing. Income is the most overrated metric in personal finance. 2 households can both earn $150,000 annually. One spends every penny on the appearance of success. The German sedan, the house in the good school district they can barely afford. The vacation they put on a credit card, the other lives in a smaller house, drives a boring car, maxes out their 401k and IRA, and invests the difference in index funds. 20 years later, one has a net worth of negative $200,000, the other has $2.3 million. Same income, completely different outcomes. Income is the water flowing through your hands. Net worth is what you manage to catch in the bucket. Class is determined by what stays, not what flows. Let's talk about geography, because this is where the formula completely breaks. If you live in Connecticut, you need to earn over $1 million annually just to crack the top 1% in your state. Over $1 million. That's the only state in America where the threshold exceeds 7 figures. Meanwhile, in West Virginia, the top 1% starts at $416,000. That's a gap of $640,000 for the same percentile, the same statistical position. But here's where it gets really wild. At the city level, the numbers become almost comedic. In San Francisco, the top 5% earns an average of $937,000. In Detroit, $253,000, same percentile, 3.7 times the income. And here's the stat that made me laugh out loud when I first saw it. In Sunnyvale, California, a household earning $339,000 is technically still middle class because the area median income is so inflated. You can be making $340,000 and be statistically average. That's not a flex. That's a symptom of a completely broken housing market. When Schwab surveyed San Francisco residents specifically about what they think it takes to be wealthy, they said $5.1 million, more than double the national average of $2.5 million. Your perception of wealth is literally shaped by your zip code. The guy making $200,000 in Nashville feels rich. The guy making $350,000 in Palo Alto feels broke. They're both wrong, but they're wrong for different reasons. Now, here's the escalation nobody talks about. The upper class threshold isn't just different across space, it's moving across time. And it's accelerating away from regular people faster than ever. In 1983, upper income families had 3.4 times the median net worth of middle income families. By 2016, that ratio had grown to 7.4 times. The gap more than doubled in 33 years. The top 1% threshold has grown from 2.3 million in 1989 to 13.6 million today. That's a 488% increase in nominal terms. Even when you adjust for inflation, it's more than doubled. Meanwhile, median wages have grown about 49% in real terms over the same 50 years. So the upper class threshold is rising roughly 3 times faster than typical wages. Every single year, the goalpost moves further away. You're not imagining it. The ladder really is getting taller while you're climbing it. The top 1% now controls 31.7% of all American wealth. That's a record high, up from 24% in 1989. The top 10% collectively owns 67% of everything. The bottom 50% of Americans share 2.5%. Let me say that again because it sounds like I'm exaggerating. Half of Americans split 2.5% of total wealth. The top 1% alone has more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. This isn't a political statement, it's just math. The wealth ladder doesn't just have more rungs at the top now. The rungs themselves are spaced exponentially further apart the higher you climb. But now you might be thinking, okay, so it's harder than it used to be. But who actually makes it? Because if it's only trust fund kids and tech founders, then what's the point? This is where the data gets uncomfortable for people who want a simple villain to blame. About 23.8 million Americans are millionaires. That's roughly 18% of households. The US adds over 1,000 new millionaires every single day. But here's the catch. $1 million only puts you in the top 12 to 15% now. It doesn't even get you into the top 10. $1 million used to be the finish line. Now it's just a checkpoint. The average millionaire is 61 years old. 2/3 of millionaires are between 60 and 79. Only about 10% of people aged 35 to 44 have hit the $1 million mark. If you're 38 and not a millionaire yet, that's statistically normal. You're on schedule. But if you're 62 and not a millionaire, you're running out of runway. Time is the variable most people underestimate. They think wealth happens in 5-year bursts. It doesn't. It happens in 30-year crawls. Here's what really surprised me when I dug into the research. According to a Ramsey Solutions national study of millionaires, 79% are completely self-made. They received zero inheritance, none. Only 3% inherited $1 million or more. The narrative that wealth is all about inheritance is statistically false for 8 out of 10 millionaires. Now, to be fair, this doesn't account for subtler advantages. Having parents who paid for college, who taught you about investing, who gave you a place to live rent-free after graduation, those things matter. But the idea that most millionaires are just trust fund kids waiting for grandma to die, the data doesn't support it. The top 5 careers among millionaires aren't flashy. Engineer, accountant, teacher, yes, teacher, management, attorney, doctors rank 6th. These aren't lottery winner careers. They're solid, boring, middle-class professions that pay decently and, more importantly, don't come with the lifestyle inflation pressure of something like investment banking or big law. And here's the stat that should give everyone hope or make them furious, depending on your perspective. Only 31% of millionaires averaged $100,000 or more in annual salary over their careers. 1/3 of millionaires never made 6 figures in any single year of their life. The average time to reach millionaire status is 28 years of consistent work and investing. Not one viral moment, not one lucky break, not one genius stock pick. Almost 3 decades of showing up, earning a decent living, and not spending everything you make. Let me give you a concrete example so this doesn't feel abstract. Take a teacher named Linda. Started her career in 1992 making $38,000 a year. Never made more than $76,000 in any single year before she retired. Lived in a modest house her entire life. Drove used cars. But from day one, she maxed out her 401k. Every single year. Boring index funds. Nothing fancy. Just the S&P 500 and a total bond fund. 32 years later, she retired with $2.3 million. Her friends thought she was lucky. She wasn't lucky. She was patient. She let the 8th wonder of the world, compound interest, do the work. Meanwhile, her colleague Mark earned almost the same salary over the same time period. But Mark bought a bigger house, leased new cars every 3 years, took expensive vacations, sent his kids to private school. Mark retired with $114,000 in his retirement account and a paid-off house worth $350,000. Total net worth, $464,000. Linda's net worth is 5 times higher. Same job, same city, same income. The only difference is she understood the game. Mark thought income was the score. Linda knew net worth was the score. Now let's talk about the racial wealth gap, because the path to upper class is not equally accessible, and pretending otherwise is delusional. White families have a median net worth of $285,000. Black families, $44,000. Hispanic families, $62,000. White households have 6.5 times the wealth of black households on average. 1 in 5 white households are millionaires. 1 in 20 black households are same country, same economy. Very different starting lines. This isn't about individual choices. This is about systems and compounding historical disadvantages. Wealth builds on wealth. If your grandparents couldn't get a mortgage because of redlining, your parents started with nothing. If your parents started with nothing, you start with nothing. Meanwhile, the white family 3 blocks over inherited a paid-off house and a modest stock portfolio. That's a 30-year head start, minimum. Individual effort matters, but starting position matters more than most people want to admit. Generationally, baby boomers hold 51.7% of all U.S. wealth, $83 trillion, despite being a shrinking share of the population. Millennials, the largest generation, hold just 9.8%, though millennial wealth is growing fastest now, up almost 13% in 2024 alone. So the story isn't that millennials can't build wealth, it's that they're building it later and slower because they started with more debt and higher asset prices. So what does upper class net worth actually buy you? Let's run the numbers using the 4% safe withdrawal rule, which is the standard assumption for how much you can pull from a portfolio annually without running out of money. $1 million gives you $40,000 a year in passive income. That's a lean retirement in a low-cost area. You can survive without working, but you're still clipping coupons. $2 million gives you $80,000. That's a comfortable middle-class retirement. You're not worried about bills, but you're not living large. $5 million gives you $200,000 annually. Now you're living an upper middle-class lifestyle without ever working again. This is where most people's definition of rich actually kicks in. $10 million gives you $400,000 a year. That's top 1% income generated entirely from your investments. You're wealthy by any reasonable definition. 25 million gives you $1 million a year in passive income. This is true financial independence, where your money works harder than any job ever could. But here's the psychological twist that breaks people's brains. Research on people with 5 to 50 million in net worth found that only 36% of American millionaires actually consider themselves wealthy. 2/3 of people with over $1 million don't feel rich. Why? Because they're not comparing themselves to the median. They're comparing themselves to their neighbors, who have 3 million, or to the guy they went to college with, who sold his startup for 18 million, or to the content they see on social media, which is algorithmically designed to show them people richer than them. This is the hedonic treadmill applied to wealth. You think hitting $1 million will make you feel rich? It doesn't. You just recalibrate your expectations, and suddenly 3 million becomes the new target. There's also updated research from Kahneman that found for 80% of people, happiness keeps rising with income well past $500,000 annually. There's no plateau where more money stops helping. But for the unhappiest 15 to 20% of people, money stops improving well-being around 100,000. If you're generally unhappy, wealth won't fix it. If you're generally happy, more wealth makes you happier. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy you out of unhappiness. There's a difference. Here's the bottom line. The official upper class threshold in 2026 is $1.9 million. That puts you in the top 10%. Americans believe it takes 2.5 million to feel wealthy. The 1% starts at 13.6 million, but the path there isn't what most people think. It's not about earning a huge salary. 1/3 of millionaires never made 6 figures. It's not about inheritance. 79% are self-made. It's not about getting lucky. The average millionaire took 28 years to get there. It's about the gap between what you earn and what you spend multiplied by time. That's the formula. That's the whole game. The upper class is pulling away from everyone else. The goalpost moves further every year. The ladder keeps growing taller, but the formula hasn't changed. Earn, save the difference, invest. Wait, the math still works. It just takes longer than it used to, and you have to be more disciplined than your parents had to be. So here are your 3 takeaways. 1, stop optimizing for income and start optimizing for the gap. A teacher who saves 50% of 70,000 beats, a lawyer who saves 5% of 300,000. Every single time. 2, ignore your zip code's definition of wealth. If you're in San Francisco making 200,000 and feeling poor, you're letting your environment reprogram your brain. Wealth is absolute, not relative. 3, accept that this is a 30-year game, not a 3-year game. The people who win are the ones who stay boring long enough for compound interest to do the heavy lifting. Don't work for money, own the companies that do.